Legacy auto is still in total freefall. Look no closer to even starting to recover. Yet sales of EVs are rising. 2024 has been a record start for EV sales around the globe. 1.9 million new sales versus 1.5 million for the same period last year. I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. It seems that all legacy auto is missing out big time, but one of them has a truly radical diabolical plan that will solve the problem but shatter what little harmony there exists in the EV world. Ford recently announced that their Mustang Mach-E may no longer qualify for the IRA, the £7,500 subsidy, launched back in 2022. And that leaves thousands of existing Mach-E's unsold in the dealers. And they hold little hope for the F-150 Lightning either getting the subsidy. Stellantis is laying off thousands of workers from their Italian Turin factory that makes the Fiat 500e amid falling demand. General Motors, after workers got a real boost in wages from the UAW deal, are laying off an additional 1,000 workers and have put EV projects on hold for the foreseeable future. VW finds sales dropping like a stone, particularly in their cash cow, China. But when their CEO suggests radical changes, they sack him. The others fare no better. Just what is going on? What is the real picture? Well, I have to say the real picture is what I just quoted. EVs are selling well, but legacy auto are in a seemingly terminal decline. I actually forecast this almost a year ago. In August, I launched a video about Ford's collapse. Link for that down below. At a time when diehards were saying, oh, just wait until they get into gear. They'll destroy Tesla overnight. Well, seems not yet. Or is that not ever? Well, somebody must be making and selling EVs, and that turns out to be the Chinese brands like BYD and SAIC, plus Tesla. Well, Tesla European 2024 sales are up 29% year on year. American sales are up 9.6% in February alone, and likely to reach a disappointing, inverted commas, 20 to 25% growth rate for the full year. Bloomberg had predicted in the last industry report that VW would overtake Tesla by 2024. Well, Tesla was beaten, but by BYD, and only for a single week in one single quarter. Full year, they're still well behind. Chinese EV sales are up 34% year on year. BYD exported 60,000 units so far, making it the world's largest exporter. In recent months, BYD surpassed VW to become the top-selling brand in the country. An analyst at The Bridge stated VW faces challenges in China, including perception as an old legacy player, stiff competition from domestic brands on innovation and software. Our Chinese customers tend to favour more innovative and affordable cars from local brands such as BYD, XPeng, Zeekr and SAIC. Well, Toyota produced a laughable first attempt at an EV and the wheels fell off. Yeah, I mean, they actually withdrew them from sale and recalled them all because the wheels actually fell off. Well, the picture's very patchy elsewhere, but in general, the year is likely to see a significant growth in the number of EVs sold, but a reduction in the rate of growth. Now, all you EV haters, please note there's a world of difference between sales growing at a slower pace and sales falling. But the key here is that the legacy auto are really missing out. I stated months ago that they would, and now that disconnect is gaining pace. Legacy auto made 4 major mistakes from which they have still not recovered, and most of them persist to this very day. They could have swept the world and actually bankrupted a fledgling Tesla had they got their act into gear, but they didn't. They all made exactly the same mistakes. Only 3 of them seem to have any firm plans for a way out, 2 of them with extremely radical but totally different solutions, and a third looking really scary in that they might end up domination the EV world, including Tesla and BYD. Well, first, they totally underestimated how quickly EVs would catch on. 10 years ago, when there were just a handful of EV factories anywhere in the world, and it were turning out a few hundred EVs a year, they could easily have dominated, but they all waited to see what would happen. Well, more realistically, they waited for EVs to fail. Inertia is an amazing thing. Newton's second law of motion states an object remains in motion at a constant speed in a straight line unless acted on by an outside force. They all failed to see EVs as any sort of credible outside force. Well, second, when they finally decided that EVs were probably not going to fail, they had an arrogance that said when they finally did decide to make EVs, that they could just switch their plants over to EVs and carry on regardless. That fallacy didn't last long. Jim Farley summed this up when he said, and I quote, "The software has millions of lines of code and we can't even understand it all." So, that's why at Ford we decided in the second generation product to completely in-source electric hardware. And to do that, you need to write all the software yourself. But remember, car companies haven't written software like this ever. That was Jim Farley. And this was not 10 years ago or 5 years ago. This was late last year. In plain English, they dramatically underestimated how difficult it would be to switch to EVs. A link to that full interview is down below, and it is a real eye-opener. Well, third, with an equally appalling arrogance, they believed that if they were to decide to make EVs, they could simply sell them at their normal ICE profit margins, whatever the selling price turned out to be, and the customers would remain loyal and queue up to buy them. They didn't. Early adopters bought some, but when they ran out, the mainstream buyers were far more selective. They wanted different. They wanted better. Well, fourth, they gave absolutely no thought, effort or money to how people were going to charge their EVs, either at home or out on the road. They deemed that not to be their job. That was for someone else. After all, they didn't build petrol stations. Well, once again, it was late last year before Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, he actually drove an F-150 Lightning for himself and took it on a road trip. And he discovered it was an absolutely appalling experience. He even coined the phrase charging anxiety, as so many of the chargers were out of order. It ended up a lottery whether you could even charge your EV at all. Well, a link to that video is also down below. Well, Legacy Auto have made mistake after mistake over the last 10 years, and it is only very recently that any of them have got any sort of act together. At least now most finally understand that it really is not easy to get a guy or girl who hangs doors on a car or components in a gearbox on an assembly line to assemble a high voltage battery pack or write thousands of lines of computer code. So what hope is there for the future? I find that most CEOs are each taking a radically different approach. Herman Diess, CEO of VW, had a very bold strategy to take EVs seriously, and he got sacked a little while ago on the spot. GM's Mary Barra has the simplest strategy: simply tell lies. Even today, at a time when she had predicted GM would be world leaders in the EVs ahead of Tesla. In fact, ahead of the rest of the world. In reality, General Motors sold less EVs in the whole of last year than Tesla and BYD sell in a typical week. And one just launched model was withdrawn from sale and recalled due to serious software issues. She could be looking for a new job very soon. Well, Ford does have a solution, and it's likely to succeed, providing Jim Farley, CEO, can keep his job, unlike Herman. He's all in with Tesla. First, it is the charging. In a really bold move, could have got many other CEOs sacked, he sided with Tesla in his bid to build and operate the largest EV charging network in the world, the North American Charging Standard. Ford drivers now have access to an ever-increasing number of plentiful, fast, reliable and cheap Tesla superchargers in the United States. It's only a matter of time before he allows, buys or licenses Tesla software to run their EVs on the condition that Tesla get it all working together. In other words, just give Tesla full and free access to all Ford software, let them get on with it. If he keeps his job, he could very well succeed. But the most radical is Carlos Tavares, CEO of Stellantis. He reigns over a vast conglomeration of disparate brands like Fiat, Maserati, Jeep, Ram, Peugeot, Vauxhall, to name just a few. Most of these brands have tried to make EVs, and every single one of them has failed to one degree or another. None is mainstream EV brand anywhere in the world, and Stellantis is particularly suffering in Europe. See, America does not allow cheap Chinese imports, so there's no threat to his US activities, but Europe does. and he's suffering massively. So much so that the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, is drumming up support to impose a huge tariff on the Chinese and is even trying to backdate it. Carlos, meanwhile, has spotted a serious loophole and pounced. Last year, he bought up a 21% stake, $6 billion, in Leapmotor, Chinese EV manufacturer, already selling their EVs into Europe and already getting hammered with the tariffs. It's about to get far worse. Carlos discovered that as a major shareholder, he is allowed under European rules to set up a factory with his new partner anywhere in Europe as long as he manufactures the EVs. They will attract no tariff, zero. And in a wizard wheeze, Leapmotors now make SKDs. These are semi-knockdown kits. They manufacture the EVs in China, take them apart, pack them up, ship them to Poland, where Stellantis has a factory that was on the verge of closing down. Well, starting in June, these kits will arrive and workers, many of them Chinese, will simply assemble them and can then legally sell them as European EVs. Not only avoiding tariffs of any sort, but gaining access to all European subsidies and grants and tax breaks. Well, then in a surprise bonus, Carlos discovered he can now do exactly the same in America. Wow, set up a Chinese factory in America and assemble kits, which will also face no tariffs and will get the full IRA tax break of $7,500 a car. Give that man a lollipop. Well, thanks very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please click the like button. And if you would, please subscribe. It makes such a difference to us as a new channel. If you click the bell icon, the notification, you'll be notified the next time we launch a video. And a massive, massive, massive thank you, last but not least, to our Patreon members. This side of the business is growing dramatically. We've had our most successful month ever, and thank you so much for your support for the channel. I'm Dave.